So welcome to Quality Coach Development Program launch. I'm Jem Ramazanoglu. I'm the QI lead at CLCH, and I started this whole ball rolling, must be 4 years ago now, and really privileged to be able to welcome all of you today to hear a little bit more about what we've been doing, a little bit about the program, and to get a chance to see what we've produced and what we're sharing with you today. So I think we've just about got everybody that's waiting in the room. So just before I go any further, I just will say we are recording this session and we'll be sharing it on the Q website. So if you aren't able to stay for the whole session, you will be able to catch up afterwards. Sid, who's been leading the process, is going to be controlling the slide. So thank you, Sid, for moving us on. And we'll introduce the team who'll be presenting today shortly. I'll just give you a quick run through the agenda. So I'll start off with just a little bit about what the Quality Coach Development Program is, a little bit about the journey we've been through to get here. Sid, Jen and Hannah are going to then talk to you a little bit more about the content, what we've developed, and just to kind of give you a taster of what's available. Rob will talk a little bit about the Train the Trainer offer that's being developed to support anyone that's seeking to implement this themselves. And then we're going to have a chance to do some question and answers with part of a panel of some of the co-design team who've been involved in the development of this product to date. And then we'll talk a little bit about what comes next. So throughout the session, obviously, you might well have some questions, and what we'll ask you to do, if that's all right, is if you can use the chat function to put your questions in. So rather than popping your hand up, if you can put all of your questions into the chat, and then Rob will have a look through those and we'll pull that out when we get to the Q&A section. So unfortunately, we just don't have time to do all the conversation I'm sure we would like to have today. But we are going to give a chance to ask and answer any questions that come to mind or that you've got about the program. And if we don't get around to answering all of your questions today, Hannah will be putting up a little blog with the recording, and we'll try and answer any other questions in that at the end of the session. So before I go any further, I should introduce the team. So hi, I'm Jem. As I said, I'm the Quality Improvement Lead at CLCH, and I kind of kicked off this whole process about 4 years ago. And then I think it's probably helpful to hand over to Sid to introduce himself.
Afternoon, everyone. I'm Sid Beach. I'm the QI training lead at CLCH. And I joined this whole co-design back when I joined CLCH in the end of 2020. So for the past few years, I've been part of the co-design. It's been an absolute labor of love, a lot of good times, a lot of hard times. Really, really pleased that we're launching the product today. And I'm handing over to Hannah.
Hi everyone, I'm Hannah Pearson. I'm a quality improvement facilitator at CLCH, and I have been involved in this project looking at the redesign of the program and developing the materials that are being published. And I will pass over to Bridget.
Hi everyone, I'm Bridget Brown. I'm an improvement advisor at Central and Northwest London NHS Foundation Trust. I joined the co-design group when I was working at CLCH in about 2020. So I've been on a bit of a journey with this program. So part of the first pilots, and then also looked at taking this program and adapting it to an organization that already had a coach program in place. And I will hand over to Rob.
Brilliant. Thanks, Bridget. I'm Rob Davis. I don't work at CLCH and never have, but I'm a director with NHS Select and work across the country with lots of organizations around QI. And I've been part of this, I think, almost since day one, as it started to emerge in Q, and Jem suggested the crazy idea of trying to create this product. So I kind of went along with it, and it's been brilliant to be part of it. So it's super exciting to be here today and just be part of this sort of launch of a really, really great, and I think super useful set of resources, which can't wait to get stuck into them. And I'll hand over to Jen.
Hi, I'm Jen Cotter. I'm Advanced Practice Lead for CLCH, but I was on the original cohort of coach with Sid, and then I've been part of the faculty and have done some of the authoring of some of the products. So back over to you, Jen.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So I said, unfortunately, we can't get everyone who's been involved in this co-design so far to be part of this panel, but we will be mentioning as many of them as we possibly can. I think there was 42 people that have been involved in the design and the development of this product over the last 4 years. So we just can't really do justice to the breadth of amazing support, experience and expertise that has gone into the design of this. But before we get into the product, I wanted to talk a little bit about why Quality Coach, and what's its point? What's the value of a quality coach, and why on earth would we focus all this time and effort and put in all the blood, sweat and tears that we have over the past 4 years to develop something like this? So I think one of the things that we've always struggled with in quality improvement is getting depth into the work in quality improvement. And what I've experienced over the years is that there are lots of different ways that trusts tend to approach their quality improvement model, and usually it revolves around a central QI team, like a small team of experts. And broadly, what I've noticed is that there is this kind of spectrum of models that we adopt, and it kind of ranges from a dependency model where QI teams become really responsible for improvement work in organizations. They are the project leads, they have specific project objectives they have to deliver on. They're really hands-on in the application of QI methods, and that generally is a very commonly used model, and often delivers great results, but can leave people slightly dependent on a small team of experts in order to facilitate improvement work. The other end of the spectrum is where a QI team don't necessarily take responsibility for the project as much as for building capacity and capability, and are much more of an enabler of others, often using a more coaching style. And I think as we're seeing this increase in demand for improvement across the NHS, one of the things we're starting to recognize is if you've got a dependency model, it's really hard to achieve the scale of improvement that's needed. So as many trusts start to move to more of this independence model for improvement support, that's really where the need for quality coaches started to come about. So if we wouldn't mind, Sid, just moving us on to the next slide, I think just to delve into these two different kind of extremes a little bit more, that I think one of the reasons why a lot of QI teams have been focused on that kind of dependency approach is because, when you get experts in the room, they tend to lead teams through a process slightly quicker and more effectively, and hopefully leading to faster, more sustainable solutions than you would if you were inexperienced in this. And therefore, you have a team who've got the time to actually put in the effort, going out, meeting with people, and it's much easier to allocate your resources to priorities. But the downside of that is those improvements may not be owned by the services. If the responsibility for improvement sits with another team, then actually the change doesn't always land, and it doesn't always get sustained. And I think that's one of the challenges you see in the dependency model. We also see improvement becomes a specialist topic. It's not everyone's responsibility, it's the remit of this small team of experts. And therefore you've got a limited opportunity to develop sustainable improvement capability within an organization. And the amount of improvement you can do is generally limited by the availability of that expert resource. So on the flip side, the independence approach really does support that development of a culture of continuous improvement, where improvement is everybody's responsibility, and improvements are led and owned by the services. And that will lead eventually to a reduced requirement for a central QI team. But the downsides of that approach is it can take years to develop skilled improvers at all levels of an organization. So it does require a real long-term commitment. You can't just do this as a quick in-year approach. And it does require a strategic approach, because we've seen many providers, I think the improvement journey publication from Health Foundation really helped to kind of articulate that if you just start your QI model with, let's just do some training, what happens is those people go back to a service that doesn't necessarily work in an improvement approach. And so what we often see is people don't get to use their skills and often get de-skilled and often frustrated. And we've certainly experienced that. We went down that road at CLCH many years ago and found that we trained some fantastic people, but they often then got frustrated and left and actually went to somebody else that wanted to use improvement skills. But one of the other challenges is if you want widespread improvement, then that really does require additional capacity that sits outside of a small central team. And so that's really where we start getting into the idea of the concept of what a quality coach is. So, Sid, if you wouldn't mind moving us on. Thank you. So I think if we were going to try and describe what do we mean by a quality coach, if we imagine this very large network of people within an organization, and for those who've seen the Virginia Mason evaluations talking about connections between teams being a critical success factor in organizational adoption of improvement, that's very much what influenced this slide, if you're thinking why it looks like that way. But if we start with the idea that everyone's out there trying to improve, often with only a fairly basic or rudimentary level of QI knowledge or experience, and typically needing guidance in order to apply QI effectively. I think we've seen some good research over the years showing that QI done badly is often worse than not doing it, not trying to adopt it at all. And in order to do high quality improvement, you really do need some help to be able to apply QI principles in a really robust way. And so what you have is a central team who are the experts in improvement science. They have typically got a limited capacity, but the focus of that team will typically depend on your model, whether you've got more of a dependency model or a independence model. But the remit typically covers things like teaching improvement methods, leading or facilitating projects, some form of coaching others, advisory service, and typically you'll find a lot of teams will support with measurement and data. But there is a bit of a gap that happens, and that's the gap between a very small centralized team and a very large group of people who have got the responsibility to improve on a daily basis. So I think really what quality coaches are is the attempt to fill the gap between a small team of experts and a very large cohort of teams who have to improve. So quality coaches are essentially frontline staff who've been trained to have a deeper understanding of improvement, but also trained how to coach and support others through the improvement process effectively. And they become really that first line of improvement support. So the real value of a coach is that they have a relationship. They're normally part of the team. They're someone you know, rather than being some distant corporate person who you don't necessarily know or trust. And they really have that role of championing and improvement at a local level, and being that real link that enables what we have heard from the Virginia Mason evaluation of the connections between people, and the enabling that kind of connectivity and hopefully connecting people who are working on similar pieces of work across different teams. So if we were to go in to the next slide, so what do we actually mean if we try and dig in a little bit more about what is a quality coach? And this is actually what we developed in the very first design session way back in, I think, 2020. We got together and we said, well, what do we mean? And we had a good debate between probably about 25 different QI experts from all over the country, and this is what we landed on: is someone who has a passion for improvement. We always talk about people getting the improvement bug. Sometimes say it's a bit culty, but essentially it is really ultimately about people recognizing there may be a better way of doing things than the way they're used to, and that often generates a lot of enthusiasm, and that passion can really drive people to put in greater effort and to really try and help others to achieve better outcomes. But most importantly, those people who want to be a coach really need to have experienced what it takes to actually apply improvement theory in real life. Because there's a lovely saying I always say is, in theory, there's no difference between theory and practice, but in practice there is. And I think that's really at the heart of this, is you need people who understand what it takes to make this really work in the complex context that we operate in. The coach needs time. You know, we all have general agreement that improvement's a great idea, but it doesn't just happen by chance. You have to make an intentional space to have the right conversations with the right people. And in order to do that, you need someone who's got the capacity to do so. And that person will teach and explain the use of QI tools, but also work to engage people in how to apply improvement and why they should do so, and why it's important to have that approach rather than just doing whatever we think is good enough. I think building the relationships is absolutely a crucial part of a quality coach's role. Again, we've seen over and over how important it is to have effective relationships. And I think there was a lovely thing that I think, Robin, you talked about in one of your conferences several years ago about, you know, improvement work is 80% relational and 20% technical. And we've all been guilty in the QI world of being focused on the technical aspects at times. And I think you really need to understand the importance of being able to work with other people. And so that's really a key focus of a quality coach, is how you work with other people rather than just being an expert in QI tools. And that's again, the presence at the front line is really there to help observe how teams are applying their improvement work, and to guide, support and nurture and encourage teams who are trying to improve, to work out how best to adopt these improvement science techniques to really lead to the changes and the improvements that we're seeking to achieve. So I think there's one more slide, is this it? Thanks. So yeah, so this is just a little bit about the journey that we've been through. So as I said, this has been a labour of love that has been 4 years in the making, and it certainly has been nothing like what we thought it would be when we first started. So it was in fact, it was before autumn 2019, we'd been having a conversation in the North Central London QI Leads network saying, you know, what are we doing? How do you develop improvement capability? And we all kind of got to this sense that we had some really good foundation training. We had some quite good sort of practical QI leadership training, how to actually run an improvement project, but we really had nothing beyond that. So when it came to how do you support others through that, there was very limited options in terms of how we could train that. And as we looked out, we realized that there are programs out there that are available. They're generally commercial programs that come with quite a significant price tag, and that we were, you know, at the time, and we still are, in a very difficult financial position. And I think the realization that we just can't afford to pay to put people through this kind of training was the real spark that started the idea of saying, well, why don't we just build it ourselves? And I think I remember saying to the group, you know, if we just got together and just shared our knowledge and experience and our resources, I'm sure we could come up with something good. And that's the brilliant time when the Q offered the Q Exchange project funding. So we thought, well, why don't we take it and see what the Q community thinks? Maybe there'd be others who'd want to, you know, join us and help us do something even better. And I think, to be honest, we were a bit overwhelmed at how many people recognize this as a common challenge and a recognized need, and wanted to help participate. So we did get, I think it was about 25 of us in the first design group back in 2020. And we really started to get through some of the crunchy details about what it is we felt was necessary. What was a quality coach? What do they need to know? What didn't they need to know? What were the prerequisites? How would you deliver that kind of training? You know, what would it look like? How could you make something that you could pick up and just use without having to have a team that support you to do that? And that's really what this was. It was the idea of saying, we'd like to create a product which we could just give everyone. And as long as they've got someone with some QI knowledge and experience, they could just pick it up and run it themselves. They don't have to design the program. They don't have to test it. It's a tried and tested product, and it would be free. And that was really the key bit, was saying we wanted to make this freely available to everyone. And then COVID hit, and the wind got completely taken out of our sails as everyone had to navigate their way through the COVID pandemic. Our plans for a rapid development went out the window, but we carried on. We moved into the virtual world of starting to connect virtually, and actually that in many ways enabled us to open up new avenues to collaborate and co-design. And I think, Sid, that's when you came in. It was just around September 2020, and brilliantly picked up the leadership of the program, which I was struggling to manage myself at the time. So thank you. Can't tell you how much better this is as a result of your amazing support. And through the next few years, we ran virtual sessions. We used Jamboard and Mural and various other virtual tools to keep the conversation going between the teams. And we eventually managed to get, by July 21, our first pilot, our first test, where we ran in CLCH. And that's where Jen and many others who were on the call, I can see, were able to participate, and many of my team took part as well. So we wanted to test it on ourselves, because again, if it doesn't work for us, then it's not going to work for anyone else. And that seemed to work well, but there was loads of learning. So I think Sharon took on the task of running a few more cohorts up in Lincolnshire. Again, more learning, more iteration. CNWL, Bridget and co ran another test over in CNWL. That was back in 22, and then we ran our second cohort in April 22. And after that, there was a vast amount of accumulated information. We'd produced slide decks, speaker notes, training materials, exercises. We had to now realize we had to cater for both virtual training and face-to-face training. We had to give guidance to people to understand what it is and how to pick it up and how to adapt it. So there became a massive task. And I think Sid and Jen and Hannah and many others have done a sterling job of cultivating and curating the content into something that we could share, that others would be able to pick up and use. And we were very fortunate to be able to procure the services of a fantastic design team to help us brand and make it in a format that's really hopefully eye-catching and recognizable, but also easy to use and easy to understand. And we were privileged to be nominated for the and shortlisted for the HSJ Partnership Award for the best NHS education program, which we didn't win, but we might win next time if you help us by taking this up and implementing it. And that's led us to where we are today, which is, it almost feels unreal after such a long time to have finally got there, to have finally finished this incredible journey across so many people over such a long time, to have been able to release to you today a product that we feel represents a summation of huge amounts of knowledge and expertise and experience about how to really create people who can support the ambition. And I think Chris Ham talked about the ambition of the NHS is probably the most ambitious attempt to embed improvement across such a large area in the entire world. So we feel this is just really necessary right now for us to be able to provide something that's really going to support us on that journey. And that's where we're at. So just before I get into the content, I'll just talk a little bit about evaluation. So one of the things Q were very keen on was that we had a really strong evaluation process, and we had some fantastic help along the way. So thank you to the Q team for that. And we've measured before, during and after the self-reported ability of the participants, and we've probably had 73 people go through the program to date. And as you can see, huge increase in self-reported ability, not just to talk about measurement, to talk about how to deal with people and challenging behaviors and overcoming resistance, how to teach as part of the coaching process, to explain what the role of the coach is, and really to take a team right through the improvement process from start right the way through to finish. And so in CLCH, again, we're obviously very keen to understand what difference it's made for us. So we've so far, I think, increased our, Sid, if you want to just move us on a little bit there, we've managed to improve our coaching capacity within CLCH by 50% by now. So if you think without investing additional resources in a QI function, but just by developing these coaches and getting the organizational sign up to allowing them to fulfill that role, we've doubled our capacity nearly, to be able to go out and support teams who are trying to improve. And as a result, we're starting to see a real shift in the number of sustained improvements that are starting to happen. And we use the Life QI system to track improvement projects. And, they've got if you're familiar, they've got a scoring system. So we're really starting to see that starting to make an impact, in that we're getting more teams who are managing to complete projects, and they're doing so more successfully as a direct result of this. So we're incredibly proud. And I think if you're asking yourself this question, why should I want to do this right now? I think the recent publication of NHS Impact is probably a main part of the answer. As I said, we've got this huge ambition in the NHS to develop a single approach to improvement. And if you explore NHS Impact and look at what that asks of us, it is to ensure that every single person is involved in improvement every single day, and that there is the right systems and support in place at all levels to enable that to happen. So I think if you have not yet had a look, please do have a look. But if you are looking at NHS Impact, and I think all of us are going through a self-assessment process at the moment, do consider whether a quality coach approach might well be part of your strategy for how you're going to develop and deliver on that agenda. So I'll be quiet now. I'm going to hand over to Sid, who's going to talk to you about the really interesting stuff, which is what have we actually made. Thank you.
Thanks, Jem. There's definitely a BMJ quality paper in what you just discussed. I think looking at the chat, people loved the kind of idea of the dependence and independence model. So maybe we can work that up into something. As Jem said, I'm going to talk you through, with the help of some of the co-designers of the program, the product. What have we created? What can you now download and access for free to be able to adopt and adapt in your organizations? There's 150 of us on the call. So my ask is, please look at it yourselves, but maybe tell someone else about it as well. Spread the word, because we've spent so much energy, as you saw from Jem's slide in this. Please do kind of share it and get others to engage with it as well. So what have we created? I thought the first thing that would help to kind of frame everything is the structure. And as Jem's already mentioned, we've gone through quite a redesign of this over many iterations and tests and pilots and feedback from different people. So this is, as it stands today, it looked very different when we did our first pilot back when Jem, Bridget and I were winging it a bit, delivering some of the content. So you can see here there's 4 different colors to represent the program structure. These are the different modules that we've kind of come up with to frame what people need to know as quality coaches. And I'm going to break those down very quickly in a bit more detail. You can also see some arrows along the bottom, which I'll touch on as well. So looking first at the red box, which is coaching and the foundations of QI, I think we appreciated when we delivered this program how diverse the group of people that joins each cohort is. We all come from different backgrounds, we come for different reasons, different experiences. And although we had a prerequisite, and we suggest when you deliver this that you probably do the same as well, and our prerequisite was that you had done some improvement work and you have the QI bug, the passion for QI, that still isn't enough sometimes to have that kind of consistent baseline, that foundation, as it says in the module title. So we thought it was really important to just cover some key topics, like what is quality improvement and how does it relate to the other types of change? So be that quality audit or service improvement, transformation, project management, the list goes on. As a coach, it's important to know what your niche is, where your focus should be. And so it's important for them to have grounding in what QI is and what it isn't. We also go to great detail into coaching. What is coaching? Someone in the chat had said about what is coaching versus mentoring. That's the exact question we ask in the sessions. What is coaching? What is coaching improvement? And how does that differ to normal coaching that you do as part of your development? Something that you'll see in here that I'll touch on throughout is that we have something called a coaching circle. And so we've made sure to build structure throughout the program to provide support to participants or to delegates on the program. And a coaching circle is 5 to 8 people who come together, who are part of the program, and they use a set structure to guide them through and coach one of the groups, so one client in the group. A problem that they face, perhaps it's related to QI, perhaps it's related to the program, perhaps it's related to a project they're coaching, or it could be something completely different outside of work as well. That's completely fine. And it's a safe space for them to practice coaching and to get help from one another. Another kind of key mechanism for support that we introduced later on in our pilots is mentorship. So mentors are experienced QI coaches or quality coaches who are able to provide that sounding board, that guidance to someone who's just finding their feet in it. They're helping to kind of chivvy them along the program. Some people need that push, and so they help to kind of maintain the momentum of the program, and they're there for that general support and guidance and just to answer any questions. Moving on to the second module. So once you've kind of covered the foundations of QI and what coaching is, you then think about how do coaches actually interact with people? Well, most of the time it's through teams. And so we thought it was really important to cover facilitation, to cover involving patients, to cover psychological safety, all the things that make a good team work. And a coach has a key role in helping that team to work. And we also then introduced some other things. If you're not on mute, please just pop yourself on mute to stop the background noise. But we also cover things like teaching. So as someone said, coaches wear many hats. And so sometimes you're a coach, sometimes you're an advisor, sometimes you're a teacher, sometimes you're all of the above all at the same time. And so we provide a space for people to practice teaching called Teach Back. And that's basically where people arrive at the start of session 3 with a bit of warning. And we say, you might teach any of these 5 topics today, and they're topics that they know. So model for improvement, PDSA, run charts, you pick. And then they have 10 minutes in small groups to prepare a short presentation and then to teach it back to the group. So they're having a kind of safe experience of that just in time, off the cuff teaching that all of us do when we coach teams. I met with a team recently last week, and it was I needed to show them what a fishbone was before we dived into understanding the problem a bit more. And that's a safe way of them doing that with groups, getting some constructive feedback on their teaching, as well as building a resource. So, if they share all their resources, they build that toolbox for QI really, really quickly. Session 6 is where Jem said, QI is 80% relational and adaptive, 20% technical. This is a bit of the technical stuff that you might want to know as a coach, which is about measurement and data. So we here focus on how coaches can enable measurement without necessarily having to be a data expert. And you can actually see, if you're a very keen eye, you've probably noticed that measurement split in 2. So we have coaching measurement on the morning of session 6, and we have statistical process control or SPC charts and how you coach them on day 7. The only reason why we've done that is because it's quite heavy to teach. I found it really tiring to teach all of this in one day, never mind having to listen to my voice on the other end talking about that. So we decided that it's best to split it out. But this program is adaptable. That's something that Jem's already said. We want you to pick up these resources and make them work for you. Bring your own personalities, bring your own experiences, bring your own local context to the slides, move things around, change it, delete it, whatever you want. You can change. We've just provided a template for you to use, and that's what we're saying here, is that SPC might work better on day 7 from our own experiences. And then the human side of change is all about behavioral change and starting to think creatively. After many discussions and after a lot of reflection as part of the program redesign, we felt that sessions 7 and 8, the human side of change, is supplementary content. So what we're basically suggesting is that sessions 1 to 6, so coaching the foundations of QI, working with people, coaching measurement, all of this is core. This is something a coach must know to be able to succeed in their role independently of the QI team, or relatively independently of the QI team. Sessions 7 and 8 are good to know, but not necessarily crucial. Of course, in CLCH and the Train the program through NHS Select do cover all 8 sessions, as we feel that it is important for our local context to know that. But you might not feel that that's needed where you work. That's completely okay. What you might do is not cover it at all, or cover it as part of CPD. Perhaps you have coach forums where coaches, after they finish the program, come together. Perhaps you cover some of these drip by drip as part of that continued development. Now, we all learn by doing. We adults learn by doing, we know that. A lot of learning design and all these concepts have been really built into and baked into the program. So all of these topics are covered and taught, but they're also consolidated by activities. So each session has 3 to 5 different activities in breakout rooms, or all groups are independent. And the idea is that people get to practice the theory in a safe space and get to ask questions and troubleshoot with the faculty. And another key thing is that they also coach. And so you can see an arrow at the bottom of the slide, QI coaching. Essentially, what we suggest you do is around week 4, delegates on the program should start to coach a real QI project, ideally one that's just starting. And there are many ways that you can do that. In CLCH, we ask them to identify work. If that doesn't happen, then we ask them if there's any improvement work where they work, improvement priority work where they work. If that isn't the case, then we also run a tandem QI practitioner program, a kind of more intermediate training, and we source QI work from that for them. And that gives them a place and a team to be able to practice their coaching in a kind of structured way, because that, obviously the QI practitioner program gives delegates on that program the skills they need. So it's a bit of an easier team to coach than jumping in at the deep end. Now, we did try that from session 1 and found that didn't work. We did try that from session 8 and found that didn't work. The kind of Goldilocks is that around session 4, that's the best place for people to start coaching. But of course, that's completely up to you, as this program is adaptable. It's for you to take and use as you wish. There is some boxes there on assessment. I'll touch on that later when we start showcasing the stuff that we've created. And so to go straight into that, the product, the thing that you're all here for, I suspect, is we've created slides for all of those sessions. All 8 sessions have full slide sets with slide notes for you to be able to use. They are on PowerPoint. You can change them. There is also a short welcome session to kind of set the context and set the scene for the program that you can use as well. And you can see here some screenshots of some of the slides that our brilliant design agency have created for us. And I think they look amazing. And I think they look much better than anything we used in the pilots. And I'll show you them in a bit more detail in a second. To support the delivery of the content, there are activities. We have created templates for you to use. We use Mural to deliver the content virtually. We actually deliver this in a blended approach in CLCH now. So we do some sessions virtually, some face-to-face. We find that works well for us to kind of build a network. Obviously, you could do whatever works best for you. This template works both face-to-face and virtually. All of the activities have been designed for both formats, so you can choose what works best for you. The picture of the lady teaching French, that's not that we're going to start teaching French in the program. It is in English. But this is just to say that there is teachback in the program. They will be asked and encouraged to teach in the sessions. There is also another structured teaching component of the program called All Teach, All Learn. It's in session 5 of the program if you don't change the structure. And that's where delegates teach something a bit more advanced. And so instead of teaching something they know, like run charts or fishbone diagrams or driver diagrams, they go away and do some homework. Like all improvers, we're somewhat self-taught, I think, at least I am. I'm sure many of you are the same. And so we want to kind of encourage that ethos where they go away and do some self-learning. They find what they like most. They come back and share that, be that a presentation for 20 minutes on Pareto charts, because that's just something they love and they like teaching it, or to showcase and demo one that they actually applied in practice, or a bit of both. It's a space for them to practice teaching, get feedback, and to practice that learning that we always have to do as coaches. And as already mentioned, there are coaching circles as well throughout the program and beyond in CLCH, but that's up to you. To support delivery, we've also created really thorough, comprehensive guides, and we're going to show you and screen share some of these just to pick out a few key things. And so we have a program leader guide. Jen is going to talk you through that in just a moment. The program leader guide is essentially for someone like you on the call, someone who's heard about this and is thinking, I want to deliver this in my provider and my organization. This says why you should do that and how you do that. 8 simple steps to do that in the program leader guide. The trainer guide is, let's say you've got a faculty of 5 people delivering the program, then this guide is for them. It's to basically say, how do I deliver each session? Because we don't necessarily need to know how to deliver every single day or every single session, but what we do need to know is how we deliver the bits that we're going to teach. And that tells you how to do that. It kind of shows the structure of the sessions, in terms of timings. It also explains the activities. I should say the sessions are, what we've found are that they're delivered around kind of 9 to 4. So they're kind of a full day of teaching, but we've made sure that they're not too heavy. We've made sure that there's a lot of breaks and that, we're not over taxing people with the content. There's also an evaluation guide. So if you are interested in looking at what are the benefits and the impact of this work, which I'm sure all of you are, then there's a guide on how you do that. And in that, we also have some guidance on how you assess delegates, how do we know that they're learning. And finally, there's an applicant guide written by Hannah and Sam Diaz, who's on the call, I can see. And they explain the benefits. Why should I, if I'm interested in joining this program as a participant or as a delegate, why should I do that? And how do I sell that to my boss and to my team? And then if that wasn't enough, we've also created a handbook, a 250-odd page document, which is a really the complement to the slides. It explains everything that's on the slides in detail. It's been written, pitched to someone who's a QI coach level, and it's really comprehensive, loads of good references. And again, we'll show you that as well. So these are the resources that we've created. There are a few more kind of supplementary ones that we won't dwell on as they're not as big, but these are the main event that I think we should show you. And I thought it was helpful to give you a demo of the slides. I think Rosie, one of our designers, is on the call. And I just want to say how brilliant this is. So this is just a flavor of the slides that we've created. I'll show you what it's like as a delegate, and then I'll show you what it's like as a faculty member. And as I'm going through, please write down questions for the panel. We will have time for questions and answers after a few of us present some key things first. So let's look at session 1, coaching and the foundations of quality improvement. Just to say that this resource, as Jem's already said, has been funded in part by the Q Exchange programme, which is hosted through Q, funded through the Health Foundation and NHS England. It was NHS England and Improvement. That's telling how long ago that this was started, as they don't exist anymore. But it's really important to acknowledge that. And also just to say, we have copyrighted these materials. The good news is that we've copyrighted them under the Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike license. What a mouthful. That means that basically you can use these however you want, as long as you attribute the authors. So you can change them, you can adapt them, you can build on them, as long as you say this was designed by the Quality Coach design group, and in particular the authors who wrote it, which are at the end of each slide set or within the handbook. It's only fair to kind of acknowledge all of the effort that's been put in by the 40-odd people. And if you have any questions at any point, then there's the contact there for CLCH Continuous Improvement Team or the QI team at CLCH, and you can also go to the Coaching Improvement SIG. So let's jump in. So I've cherry-picked them. This is not in any kind of set order. I just thought it'd be helpful for you to get a flavour of the slides. And so the first thing is that there is good indication. It's a really structured program. And so we've made sure that there's good housekeeping for you. So there's, this is obviously if you're delivering it virtually, there's the usual things that you would expect, like raising your hand, chatting in through the chat, breakout rooms and how they work, as well as some useful indicators on the right-hand side, like please take a screenshot of this if you need to, if that's kind of how you kind of learn, or if you need to kind of consolidate that later. References to the handbook, because the handbook is a really useful resource. Some people like to read it as they go through the slides, and so it's important to have that acknowledged in the slides. Activities, kind of flagging to people, we're about to go into an activity, you really need to pay attention right now because you're going to be in your breakout rooms in just a moment, as well as some self-directed learning. So that's some really useful kind of housekeeping that we've created. As I said, learning design has really gone into the whole effort of this program. And so there is a clear aim for the program, and there are clear learning outcomes. You can change these if you want. These are what we think is needed for the development of a quality coach, the thing that a coach should be able to do upon completing the program with minimal supervision. I'm not going to read them out to you right now because I'm sure you're more interested in seeing the actual resources, but they're there. They're also in the program leader guide, the trainer guide, the handbook, so you can read those at your own leisure and download them from the Q web page once we share that through the chat. Coincidentally, I thought it'd be helpful to show you a slide showing a bit of differentiation here. So we often come into programs about coaching, sometimes with a bit of a background of coaching development and coaching individuals through their own personal development. Coaching improvement, quality coaching is different. And so this visual breaks that down, and it's part of the coach really understanding their role. So when they go out to teams and start contracting, they're confident and capable of doing that. And obviously you can see that this uses a lot of visuals, and this will make sense in a moment, but there are a lot of notes to help you with this so that you can deliver this, because actually what does this plant mean? That doesn't mean anything unless you know the context of the slide, and that context is on the slide notes. And really coincidentally, again, someone said about the kind of hats that coaches wear and the difference between coaching and mentoring, and we explain that in the program. So the fact that they will be a coach, that's their primary role, but they will also take these other roles on as well. And the slide notes help you to kind of explain that as well as kind of trying to build that independence that Jem spoke about right at the start of this presentation. How do we build that independence in teams well. Coaches have a role in that, of course. We use Grow Coaching in the program. Feedback from delegates is that they love this. This is probably one of the key highlights, is that they learn a nice structured tool to help them, or model to help them to have a conversation with teams, as it says at the top of the slide. This is something that's not been created by us. Many of you will know Grow Coaching. That's why we've incorporated it, because it's a well-known tool. It was developed by John Whitmore. And here you can see that we would talk through the different stages, and then we jump into the activities. So there's a bit of theory on Grow, and then through the tool in the top left, you can see this symbol of activity and this symbol of breakout rooms. That's to flag to you and to delegates that we're about to jump into an activity. In this case, we're going to ask them to come up with some questions for each of those 4 sections. So come up with some questions in your breakout room for how you might explore the goal, how you might explore the reality, the options, and the will of the way forward. And they do that together in small groups just to get a bit of practice, so they're not on their own. And you can see also that we flag activity numbers for you as a facilitator. In the trainer guide, there is detailed descriptions of activity 1.6 and all the other activities, so that you have that to hand. If you want, you can have it printed out in front of you, just to remind you and reinforce the delivery, and so you can explain that activity as clearly as possible. And then this was Bridget's idea, so thanks, Bridget. But live coaching, they've just had a go at developing it in this first session. Now let's experience it. And I had the pleasure of being live coached. I think I've been the person who's been live coached every single time, because no one else wants to be. Who would want to be coached by 25 people? It's quite daunting, but it was really helpful for delegates to be able to practice, ask the questions they just come up with as a team, start to build that confidence and really understand what Grow Coaching is. So we really do use activities and try and make it as enjoyable as possible. People love coaching a coach. And they love to really kind of challenge you. So when we did this a few times, the delegates really kind of found this really enjoyable and helpful. And I did, as being coached by 25 people, what a pleasure. Also, prepare yourself if you do that. And there's loads of other really useful tools. So again, a very visual slide, but really useful slide notes here. So what I thought I'd do now is screen share the actual PDFs of the documents that we've created. I'm going to start with the trainer guide, just to kind of link that into the slides. We'll then move on to Jen, who's going to talk through the program leader guide. We'll then move on to the evaluation guide, and then the applicant guide, and then we'll go on to the handbook. Again, if you have any questions, please pop them in the chat. This is a really great time for you to do that. So let's start with the trainer guide. It will eventually load. Can you see that? A thumb up or a nod? Yeah, brilliant. So this is the trainer guide. As I said, it's 114 pages, so it's a very comprehensive guide. No one person necessarily has to read this. It's often kind of divvied out and delegated amongst a faculty. And this basically explains how to deliver the content for each of those individual 8 sessions plus the welcome session. And for now, I'm just going to highlight a few things to you. I won't be going into any significant detail just for the sake of time. We will share the link to download these in just a moment, and you can go through these at your own pace. For now, there is a contents page. It explains what's in the document that we've created, of course, and it's very useful because it's clickable. It goes through to different sections. In this case, the aims and learning outcomes, as I promised you, are in the guide. Here they are for you to be able to use should you want to. Hopefully they're very well written. I think they're really good. Then I'm going to just skip through, so bear with me. This is a whistle-stop tour. It will absolutely always be a whistle-stop tour just for the sake of time. But you can see we've also created helpful guidance. I will zoom in a second. This is the structure of the program as it stands with no changes in terms of time. So how does that session 1 work over time? How does session 2 work over the day, starting at 9 o'clock, just to make it easy? You can see that. And so if I zoom in and go for now into coaching and the foundations of improvement, you can see here, this is session 1. And then if I go to the right-hand side, the timings are on the right-hand side as I go down, just to kind of help you navigate. And I gave you a few kind of sneaky hints of some of the content, but here we can see actually the Grow Coaching doesn't come up until the afternoon of that first day. So it was just a flavor of some of the content. You can see that, and I find this really helpful, because what you might use this for is, as a faculty, you sit down and say, okay, what skills do we have? Who knows about this? And we can start delegating and decide who's delivering what content using one piece of paper, as opposed to kind of having to scroll through every single thing. So a really helpful summary document of the resources. And as I said, there are also guides for every single day. And so this is the section, part 2 of the trainer guide on page 19. There are guides for sessions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And again, this is clickable. And so I can click on session 1, and that will bring me to, let's say I'm delivering this session with Jem. Jem and I would sit down, we'd look at this and review it and just see whether it makes sense to us. And here, again, it's going to be quite small, but it says session 1, tasks we need to do before the session. For instance, if we talk about a particular article from the BMJ written by Adam Backhouse, maybe you want to read that before if you're going to deliver that slide, just so you really know what you're talking about. There's some really good examples in that article, but also some practical things like prepare the polls. Tasks for delegates to do, so you might send a reminder email to people, please meet with your mentor before we start the first session, etc., etc. And then also some things for you to do after the session. So really practical, helpful tips for managing the days. Also some learning outcomes on the next slide, the next page, so you can see what's covered in that day. You might want to tweak and change them to suit you. And then there's the schedule, as I said. It explains the structure over the hours, how you deliver this content. Of course, it's an indicator. It's not going to be rigid. This is just a template for you to use. Some people want to talk a lot more about something and a lot less about something. You might remove something entirely, but it's there for you just to get a sense of, when we've created these slides, how did we deliver them and how do we think you could deliver them? And then helpfully it references when there's an activity. So if I go to Grow Coaching at the bottom here, which is highlighted by my mouse, 3:05 to 3:35, Grow Coaching, it explains the activity 1.6. And so there I know where to go to do a bit of prep to be able to prepare for the delivery of that specific topic. And then here, it has a summary of the activities on the following page with a link to a template. And then there's some useful guidance on the activity. I appreciate how quick that is, but it's just to give you a flavor of how we've structured this so that when you go through it, it makes sense to you. It should make sense anyway. But what we want you to do is to explore this in your own time and to really kind of digest what's in there and make sense of it all. Because hopefully we think it's really helpful and really, really high quality. So now I'm going to hand over to Jen Cotter, who has been instrumental in the redesign of the programme and has actually gone from being a delegate to being a core member of our faculty, which is really interesting. Jen's got some really useful insights, which I'm sure you'll ask her in the Q&A. Jen, do you want to talk us through the Programme Leader Guide?
Yeah, thank you, Sid. So this is the Programme Leader Guide. So this would essentially be if you came to this session and you thought, yeah, this is something that I want to adapt, I want to adopt. This gives you all the fundamental information that you will need to go to a sponsor and get executive level agreement. This gives you some good documents, and then it tells you about the how to do from a program leader, say a QI lead within a trust or an improvement lead within a trust, and go through some of those bits. So this first bit really is the initiation of an executive summary. So this first section is the what and the why. Why would you do this program? What is this program? What is a quality coach? So if you were to go and have a conversation with that sponsor, you could send this first half of the document to the sponsor and say, these are the things that you could do. The next section is the key questions about the quality coach development program. So this is almost trying to preempt some of those questions that you might be asked by that sponsor at an executive level. Also, I did notice, I think Charles put a question in the chat, there was something about a faculty. So actually one of the questions is, what would a faculty look like? So the first question that we go through is, what are the benefits of developing quality coaches? So essentially, this says very short paragraph about everything that Jem spoke before. So what are the benefits to the organisation? What are the benefits to the staff? And what are the benefits to your patients? So yeah, it goes through those faculty, those FAQs. The next bit is then on page 16, Sid, is some further reading. So, sorry, it's page 17, further reading. So maybe if you wanted to do some extra readings, so just in preparation of maybe going to have that conversation with the sponsor, you might just have a bit more knowledge in your armory to have those conversations. But also if your executive wanted a little bit more information as well, we've got all this further reading resources and links to it. The next bit is really the how. So you're going, okay, so how am I going to do this? So we've come up with, again, 8 different stages that you can do that are really a step-by-step approach. And this is coming from, so my background is education and facilitation, really. And this has come from an education, but also we've done this quite a few times now. What are the different stages that we need to do? Because it doesn't really help if you try and jump a step. Yes, you might be able to do some of the steps in tandem, but kind of if you miss a step, you might try to then be chasing your tail later on. It sounds really obvious. Step number 1 is reading this document, but I think we wanted to be very clear that you need to read it from start to finish before you then try and start doing anything to do with the program. And then all the different stages that you'll need to go through. And then on page 37, there's a glossary of all the terms. So we know QI it seems like a different language. Me coming from someone who doesn't have a QI background, it's quite nice to actually have all these different words that just make a little bit more sense to the average person. So I think that is the trainer guide pretty much summed up. Amazing. But it's a very detailed document, so please go and read it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jen. Really, really helpful. And now we're looking at the evaluation guide, which Jen and I also wrote. So you don't get to breathe too much, Jen. Looking next at the evaluation guide. So we're going to be very quick on this, just so we can get to the Q&A. But again, there's a contents page. There is a contents page for all the resources you can go through. Just to say this has actually been written in 2 parts. First part is about the evaluation of the program, which I'll talk about very, very quickly. And then there's a delegate assessment section, which Jen will talk you through. Now, unsurprisingly, we've used the Kirkpatrick model for evaluation. Many of you will know and love this tool already. If you don't worry, there is a detailed guide on how you use this. And so we've used these 4 levels of evaluation and provided some structures and templates to help you to do that. So firstly, looking at the reaction, did people actually like the training each day at the end of the program? Second level, learning, did they actually learn something? Third one, did they actually do something with that learning? Fourth one, has the wider organization benefited, or the system that you work within? And so you can see here some really helpful tools. So this is, for instance, level 1. We've said, what is it, how you might do it, and when you would do it. And then there's some links to some appendices here. So for instance, looking at, let me just pick appendix 1, the session feedback form, really simple and quick session feedback form. And then below that is the program feedback. So that's looking at whether people found the program itself helpful. If I go to page 10, then we're looking instead at, have they changed their behavior? Are they using and implementing quality coach tools and techniques and methods with teams? Well, the way that we thought that you might evaluate that, this is just a recommendation, is through a reflective log. There are reflective tools in the handbook that delegates might use, and they might use those and discuss those with their mentors, and we might review and reflect on those at the end of the program. And there's also some guidance, for instance, on how you might do some 360-degree feedback with people that they interact with, like the people they coached, their mentor, their colleagues back at base, the faculty, and their peers on the coach program. So I won't dwell on any more than that, but just to say, we've given you some suggested templates and structures to evaluate the program. And I'm going to hand over to Jen to talk briefly about the delegate assessment.
Yeah, so with the delegate assessment, to just be quite clear with this as well, we haven't said that there has to be an exam or a type of assessment at the end of the program for someone to be able to pass and call themselves a QI coach. Obviously, there is the assumption that people should complete a certain amount of the program, if not all the program, and have done some live coaching and participated throughout the program. The amount of assessment is really up to you as an organization. We've split it into formative and summative assessment. So the formative, I would really suggest for you to do, however you decide to do it, do something, because if nothing else, that really tells you if what you're teaching is landing or not. And because you might be teaching and you think that you've made something really clear, but then you have people go off and do something, or they go off and do an activity, or they go and have a conversation with their mentor, and it comes back and you're like, that didn't land. So actually we need to go back over that, or we need to modify our planned teaching moving forward, because maybe we're in a group that doesn't have so much QI knowledge, or actually you might have a group that is really excelling. So you think, you know what, we can move through this quicker and we can get onto the really meaty stuff. So it's quite a good idea to go through, and we've given you different types of formative and summative assessment. The summative assessment is, at the moment, I'm sure Sid will talk about this, but the program is not accredited. So it's not that, again, you have to do a final assessment to then call yourself an accredited QI coach. But this is just it's one of the best things that I found as a delegate was actually one of the final things we did. And when I was when I was on the faculty, we then had this celebration events. And one of the best things that they did was they produced a poster and they had to talk about it with the teams that they'd coached. And that was such a positive, amazing way to finish the program. So it's quite a nice thing to do at the end. And there's lots of appendices and different things on this and in the program guide.
Thank you, Jen. And as you can see, loads of really useful guidance that you can choose to use however you wish. Something that we've created for delegates who might be considering, people who might be applying to the program who are interested, is an applicant guide. So Hannah, do you want to talk briefly about that?
Yeah, thank you. So this is the applicant guide, as Sid said, for people who are kind of considering going on the program, being delegates on the program. It's a short 12-page document which just gives kind of an outline of what the program is and answers key questions that people might have when they're thinking about whether they want to go on the program or not. So what is that program? What's the purpose of it? And then it goes through it provides the structure and also goes through what the benefits might be. Again, so benefits to you as for your development or for your service, for your patients, and also for your organization. And we also put in a section there about how you might make a case for this to your manager. So obviously it's quite time intensive. People might come up to resistance being allowed to go on the program, I guess. So we made it nice and clear so that people can kind of make a strong argument if they really want to go on it, for how they would be able to do that. And next, are we going on to the handbook as well?
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to do two things at once and failing miserably. Do you want to talk about the handbook?
Yeah, so next we're going to talk about the handbook. So this is much, much longer. So it's 258 pages, and a lot of work has gone into this, and we've been through lots of iterations. So this is to support delegates again whilst they're on the program. Goes through all of the talk content. This page here is the contents page. It's all, as with some of the other guides that Sid showed, you can click on it. So you can click through and see all of the different bits there that are covered in the learning. It also provides like an overview of the program again and how to use the handbook. So you see on the right here that it's split up into 7 chapters. So it matches again with those 4 coloured chapters here, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Those are the talk content that goes through the programme that people will have. So it matches the slides, basically. It matches the slides. The pre-programme provides a quality improvement refresher. So these are things that people should really know before coming on the programme, but it's also there for reference for people to have it as a refresher, as it says. There's reflective tools that people can use, and it gives guidance of how you might use those throughout the program to consolidate what you're learning. And then there's also a space for people to set their own learning objectives for when they're starting on the program. This bar on the right-hand side, it has different colors on it, so you can click through there. And again, they correspond to the different chapters. So this chapter is coaching and the foundations of improvement, and that is split up into different sections. So you can see the sections on the bottom there, and you can click on these again. So we could click on your role as a quality coach, and it takes us to there. Each of the chapters are set up in this way. At the top there, it says kind of at the end of this section, what you will, so it provides an overview of what's in that section. And this talks about contracting, importance of contracting as a coach, and it also looks at the different hats. So this is the same content that is relating to the slides that Sid was showing earlier. So it obviously provides much, much more detail to support people with their learning, providing that extra information. This on page 100 as well, this is an example of a role description of a quality coach. So this, the coach forum at CLCH came up with this. So what a coach looks like at CLCH. So it's specific to that environment, but it's a really good example of what people might build on if you're thinking about adopting this program within your organization as well. And then if we click again on the lighter blue color, so that will again take us to a different chapter. This is the human side of change, and you can see the various different sections within there. And then we're looking at human behavior in QI. Again, it's got the, by the end of this section, you will see the kind of summary of what's covered in that section. We've just kind of chosen this one at random so that you can see that they're all set up in the same way. So this covers technical and adaptive change and COM-B, resistance to change next. And it also goes through what it is and then using it as a coach. Similarly with COM-B, what that is, why it's useful as a coach. And then, so it's just got loads and loads and loads of information in it and lots of different tools and how they're beneficial for a coach. And at the end, we've got more information. So we've got further opportunities. So things that people might be interested in terms of development, as well as all of the bibliography. So there's loads and loads of links for further reading if people are interested, if you're interested in a specific subject and you want to know more about it. And obviously this resource is so brilliant because so many people have been involved in writing it, and all of the acknowledgements of everyone that was involved is listed there. So that is a whistle-stop tour of the handbook, and there's an index as well to easily find things.
Thank you, Hannah. And I just wanted to show you the slide notes because I forgot. But just to say, when I mentioned, for instance, let me just pick one that I showed you. This one, coaching versus coaching improvement. As I said, before I pull up the slides for Robin to talk about the trainer, there are comprehensive slide notes. So you can use these, you can change them. They are there for you to help you to deliver the content in your local context, whether that's at an organization or a system level. Rob, do you want to talk about train the trainer?
Yeah, there's loads of questions, so I want to try and get to that as well. So if you missed earlier, I'm Rob Davis. I work with NHS Select. We're a national membership network. I know some of you are members and I can recognize some familiar faces, so it's lovely to see you. My motivation here, or our motivation, is we think this is an absolutely fantastic, amazing resource. I mean, as you see, it's incredibly comprehensive with loads of great stuff. So we're really keen to support getting it out, to support people to deliver it, really. So that's where we're sort of coming from. So we're going to run a Train the Trainer program starting at the end of sort of November, so people can come along, experience it. It's kind of a bit, you know, do one, see one, teach one sort of methodology. Experience it, talk to others that are going to be delivering it, and go through the program, and, you know, learn from Sid and others who have sort of delivered this and things. If you flick onto the next slide for me, I think that's a bit more detail on it. Yeah, so our sort of vision is we're going to try and do a cohort 1 of Train the Trainer, probably about 20 places. We don't want to make it too big. deliver that perfect, virtually, starting in November, with a view to doing cohort 2 in February, where we hope to sort of be able to have 30 spaces. And we might flex and adapt that depending on what the sort of need and desire is, really. So cohort 1 will do the full 8 modules with a sort of trainer hat on, thinking about how you could learn, go through all the materials, learn, get really familiar with it, with a view to you going off and running that in your organization. But it would also be sort of suitable for if there's 1 or 2 of you in an organization who want to come along and just be trained as a quality coach. That would work as well. NHS Select membership is your organization wide membership. If you are one, get in touch. If you're not, it's all on our website. But what we're thinking is, if you're not a member of NHS Select, we still want to be able to support you. So we're going to try and deliver it at cost, which we think is about £2,000 per person. Hopefully that's not, an horrendous amount, but we think that's going to be what it's going to cost us to run it. So if you are a member of NHS Select already, we hope to be able to do it in your existing contract with us. If not, it will be about £2,000 per person. We're just sort of firming up those prices, really. And if there's other support you want, whether that's more, I'm wondering whether there is a bit more building on that, the SIG and the networking opportunities. But if you want to know more about that, please just get in contact, either with myself or Sid. So drop us an email if you want to know more about how to access that, and we can explain all that. I think that's all I wanted to say on that, really. Unless there's anything to add, Sid. No, Q&A time. I think I've been trying, as we've gone through that, to sort of collate all the amazing questions that have been pouring in, which is fantastic. Loads and loads of love for this, which is just great. And I think everyone can see that it's a completely amazing product. So let me go to my big list of questions, which I've been trying to keep on top of, and in no particular order, really. Loads of comments on the great results, which was brilliant. The kind of how many question, how many people do you need in a faculty to deliver this, do you think? I don't know who's best to answer that. Is that
I can give that a go. Bridget, chip in. Yeah. Jen, chip in. We've all of us have delivered it. I think that's the kind of interesting thing. So we all might have different perspectives. But I think for me, I've delivered this with one other person, and that's been okay, because that one other person knew a lot about the program. They knew a lot about the subject matter. And so it's really variable. It really depends on who you might have around you. So for me, I think 2 is probably okay. But you could go up to more than that. In our most recent cohort in CLCH, I think we had something like 5 or 6 people deliver the program, where we took it as a more modular approach, where 2 people might deliver the coaching and foundations of QI, 2 might take working with people, etc. And obviously sometimes there's a bit of overlap, isn't there? But that tends to work quite well. In terms of delegates, I don't know if that was part of the question as well. We've delivered this for kind of 15 people, and that's been okay. Ideally a bit more than that, but it really depends on demand, urgency, etc. I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts on it.
I would just, on the faculty side, as Sid said, if you've got 2 people who are very experienced in quality improvement, can manage perfectly fine with 2. And I think it's about looking at the content, looking at where you might have gaps in your own knowledge, seeing what resources you have in your organization. So for myself, taking it into another organization, for the human factors element, we have human factors trainers in the organization. So I called on one of the human factors trainers. So it's about looking at the content, looking at your local context and what you have available in your organization, but certainly 2 experienced people in quality improvement could deliver this.
Oh, I'll chip in just to say I've spent many years as the lone QI guy in an organization, and if you're in that space, it's not that you can't do this on your own. If you're an experienced QI facilitator, it's just going to be really hard if you've got a decent sized cohort to facilitate effectively. It's going to be incredibly draining to do it as a one-man band, as it were. So it's not that it can't be done solo, it's just it won't be as good as if you're doing it with somebody else to help. Really, it's the exercises and activities, that's really where you need probably at least one other person to do it justice.
Yeah, and it's always great to work with someone else just for that sort of feedback, or how did that go? That didn't quite work, did it? Should we do it differently next time, kind of thing as well. Another really good question. I'm not sure who's going to be able to answer this. What's the experience of people outside the original design team of implementing and delivering this? Have we got to that stage yet, or is that watch this space, we'll tell you in 6 months? Who might be able to answer or have a view on that?
Hannah, I'm going to spotlight you. I'm sorry. You're in the panel
Awesome.
now. Welcome. So Hannah, you've delivered some of the content. You've been part of the co-design, but not in terms of the development of the structure or the materials as much. It's been more about the refinement of those and making them into a real product. So how was that experience, I guess, for you in terms of delivering the content?
It was really interesting. It's such kind of detailed content. I've done coaching courses in the past, but to kind of frame it in the way towards improvement, it was like a real mind shift for me. So it was really interesting to deliver it. Really good. I feel like my kind of QI knowledge has expanded exponentially from being involved in this. I don't know if that's answered the question enough. That's all I have to say, really.
Yeah, and one of our colleagues, Carleen Huggins, I don't know if she's on the call, but she delivered the most recent cohort at CLCH without being as involved in the design as well. And so it was almost a test of the redesigned content. Does this actually work for someone to kind of pick up off the shelf and deliver? And her resounding answer to that has been yes. So that's been really helpful. And you know, that was good for us to step back and see that in the kind of the real world, as it were.
Yeah. And that was part of the piloting process. Is we did with the second pilot, we basically gave it to someone who hadn't been involved in the development of the program to date, and said we need to know what happens if we give it to someone who's not been involved and doesn't have the background. So that was part of the piloting process, and we got a huge amount of learning about what we needed to do. And I think there's lots of people saying you've thought of everything. It's because we've tried and failed many times with this to make it work, and I think we've learned from that in true QI form. So you know, we wouldn't have been able to get it to where it has if we hadn't got that feedback and the support from all those people who'd literally just had a go and told us what didn't work for them.
Brilliant. Bridget, you've got a hand up there.
Yeah, so I was part of the design group. I co-delivered the first pilot with Sid. But I wanted to just give people a heads up that if you are taking this into another organization, I completely underestimated the time that it would take for me to deliver this. So I was sort of thinking, well, I've done it before. I just pick up the slides and I deliver it. But you really need to think about what sits behind all of that. Yes, there's the time to deliver the slides, but there's a lot of time setting up the program, setting up the structure, recruiting the people onto the course, looking at all the guides that have been written for you. Really, as Jen said, read the guide, the first thing. All of that takes time. You're often, and of course we were adapting at the time, which is not the case for these slides, but you may well be adapting for your own organization. So really factor in all of that into the time that you think it will take. I think there is a figure in one of the documents, and I can't remember what we put in the end, Sid, but a good chunk of your time, 50% of your time, perhaps.
Yeah, it's in the program leader guide. In the faculty matrix, it says that in much more detail.
Yeah, there's everything you've ever thought of and more in every one of those packs. I just saw a quick comment in the chat. Do you need to do the trainer to be able to deliver this? No. And that's what's really, really lovely about it. It's for you to pick up and go with it, which I just think is fantastic. The other bit is sort of logistics of running it. There's been a few questions, and I'll sort of try and summarize those. Are there sort of any incidental costs for running the program, e.g. materials, and any sort of thoughts on how many delegates, trainees? Who's in a good place to answer that? From my side,
there weren't any incidental costs. We delivered it virtually. We had all the slides. We provided digital resources to people. I think there's a question about the printing element. I'd love to see the handbook printed. Maybe I'd just love someone to print it for me. So think about that potentially, but otherwise you would be looking at the resources that you have and making use of what you have. If you were running it in person, there might be costs attached to that, rooms, all the usual stuff for any training. But in terms of incidental costs, there weren't any for us. What was the other question, Rob? Delegate numbers.
Delegate numbers, yeah.
This is possibly a personal reflection. Others feel free to jump in. I think a small cohort is better virtually, 15 to 20 max. If you are going more than that, really think about the support and the use of breakout rooms. All of that is in the guide. But for people to get the most out of it, I'd say about 20 people in a virtual setting, possibly more in an in-person setting.
Brilliant, thank you. The other question I really want to get to as well, experience of running this maybe across a region or ICB and that sort of concept of joint delivery. I think that's a really exciting area for us to go down in terms of spreading workload of delivering this as well. I don't know, Jem or Sid, any thoughts on that?
So that was definitely part of the intention when we started out with this product. Was we recognized that you know, as I said, this came from originally a conversation we'd been having across North Central London, saying actually could we do it together, and so that was always kind of in the thinking when we designed it. There's nothing to say you can't pick this up and agree to run this across a cohort. I think we did test in one of the pilot sites where we tried to do it across organizations, and I think it's absolutely intended to be set up to be delivered in that way. It's really down to, you know, can you agree to run it together? Can you agree how you're going to split the resources and the time, and how you're going to recruit people? I think we've had loads of interest in the product and people who are intending to apply it within organizations, across whole systems. And I think the whole point of the way we've tried to design this is that it will work for any of those settings, and it's intended to be adapted.
Brilliant. Yeah, I think it's just super exciting, isn't it? And if we also, every sort of health community is at a slightly different place. Some have got really established QI teams that can probably just pick this up and run. Others, it's kind of a lone QI person beavering away trying to get massive impact. So and again, if NHS Select can help in any way in terms of training coaches on a cohort, or come along to the train or just to network, as you know, and join the SIG as well, which would be super helpful. Okay, any other question? I think we've covered a lot of them in the chat as we've gone. Can you type into the workbook? Yes, there's a Word version I think I spotted as well, so you can kind of edit it, which is fantastic. And have I missed any questions? I think Emma asked a really interesting question. Is there a critical mass in terms of number of coaches to make a difference in an organization? It's probably outside the scope of this actual course, but Jem, any views on that?
What a brilliant question. And yeah, I don't profess to know the answer. I think there were so many other factors that you really need to take account of. I think I mentioned right at the start, you have to have a strategic approach to building improvement capability and utilizing improvement capability if you want to get the benefit. It's really easy to train loads of people up and make no difference whatsoever. And we've done that before. We've trained, 60 odd people to a really quite high level and then not had any plan for how to utilize their skill and resource. And you get nothing, essentially. In fact, what you tend to do is you lose people. So they get frustrated. So I think the challenge isn't just about the numbers, it's about the coherent strategy for how you use improvers in an organization, and the number that you need is going to be dependent on your ambition, essentially. So how much do you want to try and improve? How committed are you to really embedding frontline led improvement, or do you just want to slightly increase the ability of your current capacity in your improvement team to be able to tackle a few more priorities? It's not quite how long's a piece of string, but I think it really does. It does depend on your ambition, and I think you make mention to the paper developing capacity, Sid, earlier on, and I think you've made a link to it. And I think that recommends that about 5% of your staff should be trained as quality coaches. And I think that was kind of the initial maths that we were starting to do, working out on our, given the size of our organization, how many people would that be and how much would that cost? And very quickly realized that, you know, some commercial models, whilst would be brilliant, just aren't really affordable. And that's why we needed to be able to build our capability ourselves, because we just can't afford to grow that number by putting them through an external course. Hopefully that helps.
And also, I think you mentioned it's how you keep those coaches connected and doing some good stuff, because you can train all the people in the world you want, but if there's not a way of them using those skills and keeping energized and connected, they sort of fizzle out. And I have seen that happen in a few places. There was some. How are we doing for time? Do we need to go to the sort of wrap up slides? Because the other sort of early question was just around that title of quality coach. It hasn't got the improvement word in there. There's that sort of thing around, is it a mentor, is it a coach? And I've been around this loop lots of times. What was the thinking there around calling it quality coach? Who's that? Is that a Jem or a Sid or a Bridget or a?
It was me.
Yeah.
I think it was. Yeah, I think we just took it straight from the paper, to be honest, because it was the paper reference to the quality coach. And I think it was Elft originally described how they'd done it using this quality coach model, and that's kind of where the genesis of it. So we didn't see the need to change it, because, you know, there was already a kind of a published bit of documentation about, you know, what is it that we're talking about here. We just thought, well, let's call it the same thing. At least people hopefully will recognize it and understand what we're talking about. Obviously the world has evolved since then, but I think, you know, you call them what you like, to be honest. It's really about the whole point is you need to adapt this to your context. You need to make it your language, your methodology. You can't just adopt somebody else's approach and make it work with your own way of working. You know, most organizations have got a huge investment of time and effort to build up their approach to improvement, and they've got a language, they've got an approach, and that's really critical, is you adopt this to make it work for you rather than trying to adapt yourself to the product, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Brilliant, fab. I think that was sort of running out of time. Sid, did you want to just say anything on that final slide? Apologies if I missed your question. That was not intentional, but we can go through all the chatter later date.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks everyone for all the questions and the enthusiasm. As we've said, this resource is available for free. So the link is there. It's also in the chat. I'm sure it'll be in the chat again very, very soon. Please visit this website, bookmark it, have it familiar to you. You can download all the things that we showcased today. The only thing are that the slides, Q are very much working on that behind the scenes. They've got some sort of file capacity server issue. I don't really know. I don't know anything about IT, but they're sorting it. And so the slides will be there as soon as possible. Please read the resources. I think the first place to start, as Jen said, is to read the program leader guide. That will make sense of everything we've done. And if you want to do the train the trainer, or you're considering it, just reach out. We're more than happy to have a chat. The contact details are on there. And as Maria's already put in the chat, please join your peers. Join the Coaching Improvement Special Interest Group, or SIG, on the Q community. We'll be using that to come together to troubleshoot all the issues we face, to share learning, to collaborate, and to maybe think about some system delivery where we share our resources. So that is a great place to save as well. And the final thing is just to say thank you to every single person that's on this list. And we don't know if this is everyone, because it's such a big task, and because so many people have been involved over 4 years, it's so hard to just keep tabs on that. 42 people at least from at least 24 organizations have been involved in this co-design. This has been an absolute privilege to be part of. It's been a labor of love. It's also been really challenging. And so we really want you to recognize the hard work of everyone and to use this resource. So thank you to everyone. Thank you to all of you for coming today. Thank you to our funders. And thank you to the design agency, Studio Quercus, who took what was really not a very polished product and made it look really professional, as I'm sure you all agree. So thank you to everyone. Thank you to our panel. Thank you to Rob for chairing the panel. And if you ever want to have a chat, reach out to any of us. We're more than happy to continue the conversation through the SIG.